Hello, this is Haley from Starlight Cafe, and today we're going to be talking about Stranger Things Season 3. For those who don't want any spoilers, Stranger Things Season 3 is just like the rest of the Stranger Things series up to this point. A little bit of mystery and a little bit of horror thriller. You have a group of kids, a group of teenagers, and a group of adults, and you usually follow their separate storylines. In this case, the kids are split up into two groups, and the teens are split up into two groups, one group being a mixture of the kids and the teens, each investigating separate mysteries that all weave into one big mystery. It's all connected to each other, and then it all converges on the end. That's your basic plot summary of Stranger Things Season 3. Would I recommend it? I would say if you've liked Season 1 and you liked Season 2, then you'll like Season 3. I'll also say, before I let you go, that for me personally, I found Season 3 to be quite entertaining. A lot of people did not think, I remember a lot of people were not a big fan of Season 3 when it came out. Well, at least from what I could tell. I watched Season 3 late the first time around, but from what I could tell, a lot of people didn't like Season 3, and I don't know if maybe there was some recency bias or what. I think I liked Season 3 more than Season 2. But that's not to say that Season 2 is bad. It's just, Season 3 was really fun, and it added something. I feel like, if you remember in the last video, I talked about Season 2 was just more of the same with Season 1, which made it good, still good, but just not as good as the original, because some of these things were just a played out version of the same thing from last season. And I feel like they still did do some more of the same stuff here, but there were enough changes to keep it interesting for me. Where the most interesting change up last season was Elle being on her own, this time around it's more, the dynamics were a bit different. I guess, before I let you non-spoiler folks go, what I would say is, if you liked Season 1 and you liked Season 2, you'll like Season 3. And for me personally, I liked Season 3 more than Season 2, but less than Season 1. And with that, I'm going to give you to the count of 3, and I'm going to move on with the rest of my review. 1, 2, 3. Alright, for those of you that have stuck around, I guess let's get on with that point there. So I feel like it was the way this change-up was interesting is you've got kind of multiple antagonists here, for starters, because you've still got the Mind Flayer, but the Mind Flayer is utilized in a different way from last time, where last time it was more of a threat from within. Now it's more of like an infection. Whereas, so Season 1, right, the threat was kind of this lurking predator? This lurking predator or beast, right? And then in Season 2, the threat was in Will's head. The rest of the cast isn't what's in danger here, it's Will. Well, at least from an outside perspective, like up until like the demo dogs become a thing, and I guess there's also the infestation with the pumpkins and with the ground or whatever, but like really the threat that everybody's worried about up until the end of the season is Will. Here, anybody's in danger because you're worried about anybody on the team becoming flayed as well. And even if they're not flayed, you've already started the season off with Billy being flayed. And here's a fun fact for those who didn't notice, because I didn't notice my first watch through, because why would I? But my second time watching it for this review, I noticed, this is spoilers for Season 4, so, you know, warning right now, warning for Season 4 spoilers if you haven't seen it already. And I'm gonna go ahead. So if you've seen Season 4, in Season 3, whenever Billy is in the upside down or is being like communicated through, like, with the mind flayer, you can hear the clock chimes, and I never noticed that. Again, because why would I? All right, season 4 spoilers, folks. You guys can come back. So, what was I talking about? Yeah, Billy, the threat of Billy. Like, Billy's already been flayed, and now we need to help him. Now, what I don't understand, right, is if they were able to get the mind flayer out of Will by just heating him up real good, why can't they do that with Billy? Like, when they locked Billy in the sauna? Well, I mean, I guess locking Billy in the sauna didn't help because he was able to break out. But surely they could have found a way, right? They could have found a way to help Billy. I thought Robin was a fun addition to the crew, and Erica, actually. Robin and Erica were fun additions to the crew to me. Robin especially, because I think Robin's pretty cool. She's definitely up there amongst my favorite characters in the series, at least as I stand here now. And she was paired with one of my other favorite characters in the series, possibly my favorite character, to be honest, which is Mr. Steve Harrington. Actually, come to think of it, pretty much all of my top characters were in one crew here. I'm not all that big on Erica, but Dustin, Steve, and Robin are some of my favorite characters. I would say the only one missing from this group, really, as far as favorites go, is I also really like Nancy. But otherwise, that's pretty much all my favorites in one group right there. So Steve's group was probably the funniest of events going on. I don't want to say the least serious, but also kind of the least serious, because they're kind of disconnected from the bigger thing that's going on, which is the mind flayer stuff. They're more focused on the Russian subplot, I guess you would say, and it was just fun watching them kind of crack the code, and then the whole sneaking into the place thing. It was funny when they pointed out, like, yeah, you got this top secret base and it was broken into by a couple of kids by accident because you left your code broadcast to the whole world. Well, not to the whole world, but to all of Hawkins. And then Steve and Robin's relationship with each other, and you've kind of got this little, I don't want to say cat and mouse, but the way, like, Steve kind of starts to come around and like Robin, and I think the show writers did a good job of not making it very obvious that Robin is lesbian, which I think was helpful because it kind of kept you, like, rooting for Steve to want to be with Robin. Not that that's a big deal. I mean, this isn't like a romance show anyway, but if you're somebody like me who just likes to ship characters together and stuff like that, it can be fun to have that on the side while, you know, Steve is getting smacked around by Russians for telling the truth, which I find funny. Erica was fun and funny. Like, she's basically like a super capitalist, but she's just a kid. And then, like, the Dustin calling her a nerd and, like, giving sound, reasonable logic as to why she is definitely just an undercover nerd was, it was fun. And also, speaking of Erica being a nerd, I didn't notice, but at the end of this season, you see her giving Will's Dungeons and Dragons stuff, which I think plays nicely into the next season. Which, those who know, I'm not going to make the season, I'm not going to make people who haven't seen season 4 go away for this, but I thought that was cool. And then we have the kids subplot, I guess. So, at first, the kids are split into 3 parties, where you have Dustin and Erica with Steve and Robin, right? That's party 1. Party 2, you have the boys. So you have Will, Lucas, and what's his name? Mike. And you have Mike. That's party number 2. That's Mike and Lucas trying to appease their girlfriends, and Will being like, guys, can we just play some Dungeons and Dragons? Like, Will's just trying to play some Dungeons and Dragons. He doesn't care about y'all's relationship drama. And then you have Elle and Max. I think of the built-up relationships this season, I think Max and Elle was the most important and probably got the most development. Even though I did really like Steven and Robin, I do have to point that out, right? Max and Elle was a very important relationship, and you see Elle really grow once again. I do think it kind of diminishes what happened last season with Elle and, what was it, Kali, number 8. I think it diminishes that a little bit because, like, so when Elle tries to find her own style, I would have thought that she would go for more of what she was, how she looked when she was with Kali. Like, I thought it would be kind of a callback to that because I remember her liking that look. But, like, me on a personal level, I like this version of Elle's taste more. This is more up my personal alley. I just think from a storytelling perspective, it was weird that they didn't go that route. They went with Elle being this kind of bright and colorful style of character. And again, it worked out in the sense that Elle and Max were able to bond on this shopping trip and really kind of become close friends, which I think is important moving forward. I'm gonna go ahead and say it now. One of the most iconic scenes, and probably one of the funniest, was Elle dumping Mike. That scene will live on for as long as Stranger Things live on, I feel. I did think it was interesting to watch Max's dynamic with Billy, and Elle's dynamic with Billy, but especially Max's, because last season Max and Billy were very not close, right? Yeah, Billy's taking care of his little sister, but Max isn't really here for it either. And so it was interesting to see her care so much this season. Like, she still thinks her brother is disgusting and a weirdo, or maybe not a weirdo, but, you know, still thinks her brother sucks and is disgusting. But you see that she cares a lot. And I wonder if Billy was the same with her last season, and I just have this biased outlook on him because he kind of gives, like, abuser vibes. And even, like, you know, that scene where he comes to get Max from Will's house, and Steve is like, she's not coming with you. Like, that to me is framed like Billy is like this abusive POS. And maybe he is, you know, characters are meant to emulate humans, and so humans are nuanced and complicated, and I understand what that entails. I've dealt with similar in my life. I just found it interesting. I found it interesting that was a relationship that they explored in the direction they explored it. And I think the show benefited from it. So I'm not gonna knock it. So then, like I said, you had your 3 parties, but your 3 kids' parties merged into 2 kids' parties, with Dustin and Erica still being with Steve and Robin, but now Max and 11 are joined with Mike, Will, and Lucas, and you have the same dynamic from when they were separated, but now it's together. So Mike and Lucas are still trying to appease Elle and Max, but now it's from much closer. Now it's getting in the way of investigating, in the way of finding out what's going on with Billy, what's going on with Will, why Will thinks that the Mind Flayer is back. Is the Mind Flayer in Billy? I thought the scene with the sauna, where they trap him in the sauna, and then the fight scene in there, I thought that was a lot of fun. Also, while I'm talking about the kids, I thought it was cool that you see kind of Elle start to overuse and then lose her powers this season. Because I remember that she doesn't have her powers in season 4, right? But I guess I had forgotten that the reason that she didn't have them was she was overusing them and then lost them in season 3. So that was a nice refresher for me, and I thought it was good that the plot went there, because when Elle is not on screen, that's where the stakes come in. Because, let's be honest, Elle carries this party, not just this party, all parties in the show, right? I would say if Elle is not on screen and Hopper is not on screen, I would say if Elle, Hopper, and Joyce are not on screen, then anybody that is on screen is at risk. If there's something going on, I guess I should say. Even though obviously, functionally, that's not true, right? Because there are plenty of characters who are in dangerous scenes when none of those characters are around. Nancy being the most prevalent of those cases, and then Steve especially as well. I just find Elle, with the powers, is able to do the most. Hopper has proven to be the most resourceful and resilient, and Joyce is just very intelligent. Not necessarily knowledgeable, right? But Joyce's intuition has to be studied, because I don't think Joyce is ever wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I can't think of an instance in these last 3 seasons that I've watched where Joyce has ever ended up being wrong. She's always had this hunch that sounds absolutely insane in the beginning of the season, right? Even if us, the viewers, know that she's right? Like, spoilers aside, she's always right. She's always right. So, I think for that, Joyce is just always gonna be safe, in air quotes, on screen, because she's never, she always knows what's coming, so she's always able to prepare for it, I guess is what I'm saying. And that's why I give Joyce the pass. I guess you could argue that Nancy is always safe too, but if my memory serves from season 4, I don't want to give her that. But for the sake of what we're talking about with this review, from season 3 and before, I would say you could throw Nancy in there as well, because Nancy has always proven to be very resilient and resourceful. She doesn't have the intuition like Joyce, but she does have that resilience and that resourcefulness that Hopper has. Albeit, I would say Hopper has it to a higher degree, but maybe that's because he's got more experience than than Nancy. And on the subject of Nancy, so let's talk about Nancy and Jonathan a little bit. I feel like Jonathan is just such a... he's almost a Tom. Or was it Tim? Ted. My bad. He's almost a Ted in the sense that he just doesn't seem to ever know... like, he doesn't really have the intuition. He's not really all that connected to the Upside Down. As a matter of fact, I don't think he's ever been in there. He always thinks that every character is crazy. He thinks his mom is going crazy. He thinks Nancy's going crazy. He thinks everybody's crazy. And it's like, you've seen all this wild shit. And when these characters, or when these people who, like, were right last time and the time before, but now they're wrong. The only person you'll ever believe is Will. Why? I think it's kind of bullshit. I think Jonathan's not a very good character, if I'm being honest. I don't know if I mean that from a writing perspective or if I mean that from a viewership perspective. And when I say viewership perspective, what I mean is, as a viewer, I don't really like Jonathan, right? But you can write a character intentionally that way, in which case that means they're not a bad character. But what would make him a bad character is if he doesn't really serve the plot, and he doesn't serve to evoke a specific emotion or thought process for the viewer, and he doesn't serve as any kind of lesson. Now, you could always invent a lesson to learn from every character, right? Whether they were intended to be written that way or not. You could always invent that lesson. So maybe the lesson you could learn from Jonathan is trust in people's intuition, especially experienced people, right? Or, don't always take everything at face value. You could possibly take these lessons from Jonathan's character. But I'm not the show writer, and I don't have the evidence to prove one way or the other that they did or did not intentionally write Jonathan with that lesson in mind. So, like I said, I'm not going to say he's a bad character from a writing perspective, because I don't know if I have the proof for that. But as a viewer, he definitely sucks in my book. And frankly, I don't know why Nancy stays with him. Talking about Nancy a little bit more, I did like Nancy and Jonathan's plot, just not as much as the other two plots, the Russian subplot and the mind flayer, like figuring out if the mind flayer is in Billy and all that. I liked those plots more, but this is where, like, between this and last season, this is where I really like Nancy as, like, the investigative character, which is, what I was introduced to Nancy as. This is who I thought Nancy was. So this is where she shines on that front. And I like that this is kind of what I've always liked about Nancy, is she's like that strong, independent woman type of character. But not in, like, a toxic way. I mean in, like, a, she believes in herself, and she has something to prove, and, she's gonna prove that she's worth her salt, And she ends up being one of the most valuable characters in every season. So far, at least as far as I can tell. My memory on season 4 is rusty, so I'm really trying not to include that too much in my thoughts with the character overall. But we're getting to that point where this is something I have to consider. But as far as from season 1 to 3 goes, Nancy is always, like, one of the most important characters. And as far as the teens subplots goes, she's pretty much the protagonist of the teens plots every time. So the least interesting of the 4 plots for me was Joyce and Hopper's subplot, which was basically just more of the Russian subplot, but from a different perspective. And the only interesting part of it to me, like, it was interesting in the sense that Stranger Things is just a fun, entertaining show. But compared to the other plot lines, the only time where I was really excited to see Joyce and Hopper's side of things was when Alexi got involved, and Murray. When you threw Murray and Alexi's dynamic into this group, suddenly it's a lot funnier, it's a lot more engaging, whereas before, without Alexi or Murray, it was just more of the same once again. And this is the only real area where I can confidently say we just have more of the same. I guess you could make that argument with Nancy and Jonathan too, but this is really especially the case here this season with Joyce and Hopper, to the point where I don't find it nearly as interesting as the rest of the other plots going on this season. It's just Hopper doing whatever Hopper wants, like, without consulting anybody else in the group or just letting anybody know what he's doing or where he's going. And then Joyce just having a hunch, acting on it, learning stuff, and then coming up with these theories that sound crazy but end up being super true. And then the whole season is just trying to prove that Joyce is right. Not that Joyce is trying to prove Joyce right, but, like, it's always just Hopper investigating based on Joyce's hunches to try and prove to Joyce that she's going crazy, only to find out that, no, she was dead right from the beginning. And it's like, okay, this is getting really played out, because we did this in season 1 with Will not actually being dead, he's missing. And then we did this in season 2 with something's wrong with Will, he's not acting right. Like, I think this upside down stuff is back. And then now we have it in season 3 where it's like, okay, I think this upside down stuff is back because my magnets are falling off of my fridge. And then, it's like, well, season 1, okay, Hopper's trying to prove that Will is not just missing, he died, this is definitely what happened, he's not in the walls, he was wrong, right? And then it's like, okay, season 2, we got Will back. All the bad scientists are gone. The upside down stuff, this is just PTSD. This is all in Will's head. That stuff is over. It's done. Wrong once again. And then here we go, season 3. Your magnets are just dead or something. Or I don't even remember what his excuse was. Actually, he didn't even have an excuse, if I remember correctly, because the whole thing that Hopper was caught up on all season was that she blew him off. Anyway, it ended up being more of the same, and it's tired and it's played out by the time you get to this point in the season. Obviously, I know that that's going to change with season 4, so I'll give them credit now. But as far as season 3 goes, because that's what this review is, that's where I'll give negative points to this season. However, that said, like I said at the beginning of the video, I still enjoyed season 3 more than I enjoyed season 2. I think that's really a testament to how the writers are very good at what they do. Because if you take my more of the same theory, like, to its extreme, then what you would have is season 1 being the best season, and it just gets worse and worse and worse every season, to the point where it's unwatchable by season 5, if that's the direction you want to go with it. I don't find that to be the case here, where I do think season 2 is more of the same. I think season 3 was enough of a change-up overall across the board this season to really make it fresh and enjoyable. Still the same enough to recognizably be Stranger Things, but different enough. Maybe it's because they chose for this season to be during the summertime, so you don't have school breaking up the action. Maybe that's what it is. Or maybe it's that you have these kind of smaller subplots going on that really break up the action enough to keep you engaged. So subplots, I'm talking Mrs. Wheeler almost having an affair with Billy, the reporters kind of treating Nancy like garbage, essentially, the ice cream shop stuff, particularly in regards to Erica, with the Steve, Robin, Dustin group, and the Mike L breakup with the kids group, right? Subplots. They're not the forefront, right? The forefront is you have the Mind Flayer taking up 2 parties' attention and the Russians taking up 2 parties' attention, right? Those are like the plot and the subplot. Or you could just argue the plot, right? But then you've got these smaller subplots that aren't relevant enough to be at the forefront, but they add flavor to what's actually going on, which is kind of like life. But anyway, so I think that's what makes season 3 so much better than season 2. And maybe if I were to go back and rewatch season 2 with the same logic that I just applied and actively thought about it like I am right now here with season 3, maybe I would give season 2 some more credit and maybe it would jump above season 3. But I'm just going to be honest, I'm not going to do that. So I'm not going to do that because I really want to jump to season 4 because I'm excited for it, and because I don't want to burn myself out on Stranger Things when season 5 comes out, because I do want to get a review of that out. I think if by the time you're watching this there is any sort of a subscriber base on this channel, I think you're all going to appreciate a season 5 review in a timely manner. So I would like to get that out to you all in a timely manner. And also I like making these, so I want to be able to get that out. Something I want to try to make sure I incorporate into these reviews, and I feel like I haven't been doing a very good job, is I want to make sure I talk about the themes. I spend lots of time talking about characters because I think analyzing the characters in a story, especially like these big long stories like this, and by long stories I mean TV shows, I think analyzing the characters is a good way to explore all the aspects of a story, because each character at some point or another represents an aspect of the story. because at the end of the day, the story is told through the characters. I guess if I want to talk about the themes on its own without just exploring it naturally through talking about the characters, I think the themes of this season is, or maybe it was just Stranger Things, the series as a whole, there's a lot of messages, probably unintentionally, about trusting people and trusting your intuition, or at least that's definitely the theme, right? Is the character has an intuitive thought about something and then acts on it and looks into it and investigates. And the theme, I guess, would be that nothing is ever what it seems or things aren't always what it seems on the surface. There's, sometimes there is deeper things going on, right? Maybe there is no theme. Maybe this is just a fun, a potato chip story. And when I say potato chip story, what I mean is it's not necessarily meant to have a deeper meaning. It's just meant to be watched and enjoyed. Kind of like these reviews, right? These reviews, there's no deeper meaning to watching a review. Well, at least for me, I make them as potato chip content. It's just meant to sit back and enjoy, maybe play it in the background while you're doing something and you just like listening to somebody talk about something that you also like, right? That's my intention with this. Potato chip. There's no deeper meaning. There's no lesson I'm trying to teach you. I'm just trying to yap, and you're probably just here to listen to me yap. Especially with videos as long as these have been. So, that's probably all Stranger Things is. But if I were to really try to dig deeper, right? That's, I think, the best I could come up with off the top of my head for a theme with these is things are not always what they seem on the surface. And then with this season in particular, I think there's probably a message in there about just because you don't get along with family doesn't mean that you don't still love them, right? I think that's the lesson I think that's the theme that Max and Billy represent, and Elle and Hopper, and the Mike and Elle stuff. You could argue there's a theme of, codependency going on here, where it's like sometimes you need to separate yourself from the things that you love so that you can grow individually from it and not let it consume everything you are, if that makes sense. I guess maybe let me elaborate on that more. What I mean is, right, Elle didn't really know who she was. She only knew who Hopper wanted her to be and who Mike wanted her to be, and I guess who Collie, number 8, wanted her to be in season 2, right? She doesn't really have a self-identity, and that's true. Well, at least, before this season, that's true. So, it was good that she explored herself through other relationships. By relationships, I mean friendship with Max in this case. It's probably a good thing because Elle to this point has been the one with the superpowers, right? And now she's about to lose those superpowers. So it's kind of important that she find an identity outside of that so that she can be more of a whole person without these powers. Because when she loses these powers, if she doesn't have, I guess her own personality distant from who she was or her powers, right? I think she would be a shell. I think that's a good way for a person to fall into a depressive state if you just view yourself as this one thing, right? So I'll use myself as an example here. If I only viewed myself as a YouTuber and this channel does terrible, it never picks up views, never picks up subscribers, I get 2 views forever, one of them being me, right? We'll go even further than that. This channel gets 1 view every video forever, right? And that 1 view is just me. It's just me on my viewing account. I would feel like worthless because I that's all I am and I'm not good at it, right? But that's not, I'm, I write as a hobby. I have, a job, which doesn't make me who I am, but what I mean is, it's another part of myself. It's a part of my day. I have a family. I have people that I love. YouTube is not my whole life. It's my favorite part of my life, but it's not my life. If I lost YouTube today, well, I'd probably die because I watch a lot of YouTube. I watch more than I create just by nature of how my life is. I put a lot of things on in the background. But but what I mean is if I couldn't for some reason, I was never allowed to make YouTube content again, it's not the end of the world. It's just a bummer. I'd still have a personality, and I'd still, I'd find a way to be able to move on. And I think if you don't have that, like in this case, if YouTube was the only thing I had going on, I'd be a shell. I'd be a husk of a person. Man, that really did get super deep, and I was not trying to go so deep. But anyway, so overall, what are my thoughts on Season 3? I loved Season 3. Like I said, more than Season 2, not as much as Season 1, and I think that's just because Season 1 kind of came in swinging, but not, I guess maybe not even swinging. Let me rephrase that. I think the issue is here is Season 1, because it's a fresh show. It took its time introducing you to the characters and the concepts, right? Where Season 3, that wouldn't have worked anyway, because now you know these characters, so it would just be boring. So I guess Season 3 is really what came in swinging. But it was just fun. It was a lot of fun. They mixed it up, so it's not more of the same, other than with Joyce and Hopper. And you had a lot going on. A lot. Which, when you're this deep into a show, you really have to do that. You really have to have a lot of moving pieces, have a lot going on. At least I feel. Because it keeps things interesting and engaging. Because the less you have going on, the less engaged you are. You're not jumping around as much. There's not as much to keep your attention. So either it needs to be short and sweet, or the longer it goes on, the more things you have going on to keep your attention. And I think Season 3 succeeds at that. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm excited for Season 4. I hope you are too. And then after Season 4, I have to check the math on when this comes out. But I think I'll be able to get the Season 5 review out. Obviously, it's going to be after New Year's, because that's when the last episode comes out. So it'll be next year, but I haven't decided if I'm going to just do a review of the episodes that are out, or if I'm going to wait until the whole Season 5 is done and then just do one big Season 5 review. I think I'd rather do that, but depending on where the channel's at by the time this comes out, let me know if you guys would rather just do one big Season 5 review, or if you want me to, the first few episodes of Season 5 come out, I'll do a review on that. And then the next few episodes come out, and I'll do a review on that. And then when the whole thing is done, we can do one big Season 5 supercut or something, right? Let me know what you guys think, but otherwise, I'm going to end up just doing one big Season 5 review anyway, and that'll come out next year. But for now, I look forward to Season 4, and then after Stranger Things, I'm definitely going to break it up a bit. I'll probably review some Ghibli movies, and it's probably time to start some anime, because I said that I was going to review some anime on this channel, and so far the only thing that's come up is Spirited Away. So I think maybe let me know if there's any that you guys want me to check out in the comments. Otherwise, I've definitely got some things I want to do a review on. Like Jujutsu Kaisen Season 3 is coming out, so I think I'm going to do some Jujutsu Kaisen videos, and maybe some Beastars, maybe some Demon Slayer, because I still need to catch up on the last, on the movie and the last season that came out, because I'm not caught up anymore. But I know what's going to happen. But let me know what you guys think. Thank you for tuning in. Have a wonderful day, and bye-bye.